Hello friends! If you have been interested in RAV Vast tongue drums, then you have surely seen this fantastic musician who has played an instrument of each scale. Today we have a guest, a multi-instrumentalist, a specialist of body sound harmonization of the human state, and simply a great guy, Ivan Ioanov. Hello Ivan! Hello Roman, hello! Well, as a warm-up, since we started talking about RAV Vast, now you will get an unexpected question from a viewer. And not just from a viewer, but from my personal #1 viewer, from my wife Inessa. Attention to the screen! In the name of the RAV Vast tongue drum, RAV means Remyannikov Andrei Vladimirovich. And what does RAV mean in the name of the Toyota RAV4? Honestly, I have not looked into it. The question caught me off guard. Well then, listen to the answer.
Recreation active vehicle. Автомобиль для активного отдыха.
There you go. Did I manage to surprise you? Yes. My first surprise was when these instruments appeared. RAV was indeed associated with the Toyota company, but I did not ask myself why Toyota has RAV in the name. But I did ask why RAV Vast. Well, Vast is depth, and RAV is Remyannikov Andrei Vladimirovich. Since we started talking about RAV Vast, please tell us about your big project for this tongue drum manufacturer. You played instruments of each scale. How did this collaboration with the company begin? It was a big and not simple project. As far as I remember, there were about 35 instruments with different scales, and each scale required a certain approach and attention in order to reveal it, to somehow interact with it, to go deeper into it and to create different compositions, states and moods, so that each instrument would be revealed as much as possible in a short period of time. Because no matter how many personal instruments I had, I played some of them for 5-10 years, and each time something new still comes. Our collaboration probably began from the very first days of acquaintance, when these instruments had just started being manufactured. Andrei presented me with the first one. I remember I had a RAV Vast Integral, the old, very old model. That was probably around 2016, if I remember correctly. And I was very impressed by the sound of the instrument. I really liked it. At that time I had a handpan, I had a tongue drum, the very first one, and this instrument caught me precisely with its depth and overtone richness. After that we kept communicating in a creative mode, maintaining contact. And when the RAV Moon line was released, I recorded a series with that line of instruments. I also really liked it. That such a compact, small instrument contains such a sound. Then I used it in many travels, and the combination of compactness and such a loud, rich sound works very well if you record the video or play just for yourself and at events. After recording this line, the idea arose that it would be good to make such a big review of the larger instruments, and then we prepared for this project and gradually brought it to life. How long did the whole project take to record 35 tongue drums? About more than half a year, probably 7-8 months. It was planned faster, but we encountered various difficulties, both technical and organizational. This project required a lot of effort and attention, but overall, I am very satisfied with the result that came out. By the way, you anticipated my question. I wanted to ask what difficulties and surprises there were. Maybe you faced some challenges personally or technically? Yes, you're right, technical ones. The main challenges were technical in nature because the type of instrument seems the same, but different scales and even specific features of each instrument require different adjustments in sound. Technically, it did not work to create some preset and work from it and everything is ready. Plus, the task was to convey the most natural sound of the instruments. That is, without any editing, effects and so on. The most live feel so that the listener could appreciate its natural sound. Each studio sounds differently. We tested a huge number of studios and spaces because the space affects the recording. An ideal studio with soundproofing and all nuances already creates ideal conditions for sound that a person will not have when they take a RAV Vast out of the box, sit down and start playing. That is already ideal conditions, and we needed to find a place where it would be lively but without extraneous sounds, without other difficulties that occur in live sound. It was very interesting to solve this task, and then we worked a lot with sound and with video. The creative part was multiple takes of music. There were very many of them. Something was recorded from the first or second time, and something did not work even from the 10th. Some scales really squeezed out everything, all of my creative thought. And in this there was both difficulty and interest in the same time, because for me each instrument is like a living being, separate with its own character. I think those who have been playing instruments for a long time know that if you compare two identical instruments, two Celtic minor, for example, they will still be different, because all of this is created by people, it is all alive, and each instrument has some unique features of its own. Sometimes it happens that due to small details in tuning, one or two tongues produce a super sound, and you can make accents on them and build your playing around that as well. When I watched and listened to your videos, I mean the videos specifically from this project, I was amazed at how well you managed to reveal the mood of each tuning. By the way, friends, all these videos can be watched not only on YouTube, but also on the official page of the RAV Vast store. If someone wanted to find out how the instrument sounds, then please click on the video. Ivan will play for you and it will be super cool. And besides that, I wanted to ask, how did you manage not to lose this creative inspiration? 35 instruments. This is not like you played accordion, then guitar, then harp, then something else, and each instrument is completely different from the other. They are still similar, only the scales differ. Where did you get inspiration from? There were two parts, one structural and one about inspiration. With inspiration, I already have a lot of experience in playing musical instruments, and that was a support point. Second, during recording, we came up with the idea that we would record the mood of playing. That is, not some specific compositions or patterns, but the mood. For example, meditative, fast, medium tempo in different rhythmic stories, and these features served as the base from which I started. And each instrument simply told me what to play on it, because I spent some time preparing with each instrument before recording. One day, 2, 3, or something I left for later, because it required a week with them. For me, all of this is simply a creative process, a process of communication with the instrument. Your words just reminded me of the famous song by Jason Mraz, "I'm Yours." You have probably heard it too. When he talked about how this song was created, I was very surprised, because I always thought that this song is about love, that a man sings to a woman, confesses his feelings to her. It turns out that for some time he simply had no inspiration. For 2 weeks he had not written a single song, and then he finally took a guitar. It was as if it told him, "Come on, create!" And he understood, "I'm yours," and wrote this song. It seems like you had the same story. You took a tongue drum and it told you, "I'm yours, play." Yes, yes. Different combinations suggest things. While you were speaking, I was thinking how to convey this to the viewers. Creativity is concrete. People want to play, want to improvise, and there are scales that are more meditative. Take the same Astronaut, one of my favorites. You just strike a tongue, there is such a deep bass and tone that you do not want to play fast on it. It predisposes you to study these combinations of notes in long pauses and to experiment with the emptiness that this instrument gives. And take the same Hijaz, which immediately disposes you to play fast, energetic melodies, because there is such an Eastern style there, and it is like a spice. It sets the tempo, lifts the mood. And each instrument has its own sensations. Some are sad, minor, some are cheerful, some are exotic. Blues is generally a very original instrument. There are Eastern scales, classical scales, Celtic, Kurd, and so on, and each has its own world. There are popular scales that many musicians play, and you can take something from there. There are 3 components together: the mood of the musician at the moment of recording, some technical base that predisposes to a certain level of playing, and the third is creativity in the moment, which right now and only like this will sound and not otherwise. I recorded the same composition, for example, 10 times, trying to play it structurally the same, and 10 times these were slightly different compositions, because on this instrument any change of strike, any touch of a finger already creates a different character. In this, I believe, is the beauty of these instruments, especially RAV Vast. The tongue allows in different places when you strike to get different timbres. You mentioned that there are popular scales, and people often ask whether there are more complex scales for beginners and easier ones. Manufacturers write, "This one is more difficult. This one is easier." Is this a marketing move, or should a beginner really pay attention to certain scales? No, it is not a marketing move. Indeed, some scales are easier to start with, some are more difficult. I recommend listening to recommendations either from musicians who have already tried many things or from manufacturers. And what is the difficulty in your opinion? The thing is that if we play the scale of the instrument up and down, then in simple scales the tongues sound together and they sound harmonious in different variations. You do not need to think in advance about some chord movements so that everything sounds good.
Заранее продумывать какие-то ходы, да, по аккордам для того, чтобы, все звучало классно.
In more complex scales, if you play like this, dissonances will already arise or not very pleasant intervals, and there you already need to know specific chords. I know that you are also engaged in teaching activities, so a few questions specifically about teaching. A very popular question among beginners: what is better to start with? To play with sticks or with fingers? What would you say? I would say that you just need to start playing. Start with whatever works, because for some people fingers will not work right away, the person gets upset and struggles until the hands get used to it, while with sticks there is already an immediate positive effect. For some people right away with fingers there is good sound extraction and the person enters the playing through the hands, and the sticks remain secondary. And the third, but this is no longer about starting, but about continuing, that, for example, for meditation and for some sound effects, sticks are very suitable. They allow the tongue to be maximally set in motion, so that the sound is dense and rich. Hands allow more artistic playing, percussion, open, muted sounds, and also contact with the instrument through the fingers. For me, it is about tactility, about the feeling of metal, skin, and how everything interacts. That is such a certain beauty. Tell us, how much I need to practice to play like Ivan Ioanov? And how much do you practice now daily or weekly? I will say it like this: Ivan Ioanov is lazy. But the first 5 years, I will not call it training, I will call it daily practice. I just played, because I really found all of this very interesting, a pleasure. And I performed a lot, so the density of playing, the average number of hours per day, was greater than, for example, in the last 5 years. Now I more often perform at some workshops, educational events, but of course I have goals that I would like to achieve, and gradually I improve some skills. But I cannot say, being critical of myself, that I move at the pace that I would like. When you just started with tongue drums, maybe you oriented yourself towards some famous performer or performers, maybe you had a teacher. How did you come to tongue drums and learn to play them? I came to tongue drums actually through drums, through ethnic music. Primarily it was that I heard the sound of the jaw harp and learned to play the jaw harp. Then I got to ethnic concerts where I heard the didgeridoo, wanted to play the didgeridoo. Then, when a drum got into my hands, I realized that I probably do not know some basic things in order to immediately play it, and I went to a drum school. This was my first training. I studied for about 2 years in darbuka classes, and there I got a basics in rhythms, in playing technique.
техники игры.
When the first hang instruments appeared, I, like many of our viewers, was enchanted by the magic of their sound and wanted this instrument. But since at that time it was very difficult to access and it was necessary to search for manufacturers for several years, because it was impossible to contact Switzerland then, I bought my first tongue drum. And I directly enjoyed the tongue drum. I had one, I remember, purple, with 13 notes, not the most standard. And then the first handpan appeared. And then I got acquainted with RAV Vast, that is, I had 3 instruments, 3 basses. Where is your first tongue drum now? I either gave it to someone or passed it on, it went somewhere. Yeah, into its further journey. The first tongue drum, like the first hang, is no longer there. Over time I changed instruments to other scales, and some have remained from those times, some have not. Did you orient yourself toward any famous performers? I mean, those who play RAV Vast or tongue drums, maybe handpans as well? At that time, one of the pioneers of the handpan was David Svarup. His music really resonated with me, and these were probably the first hand compositions that I listened to. I even managed to attend his concerts. I also very like Cabisao, famous percussionist musician, and I truly get inspired by his creative work. Malte Martin is also very cool. He is coming to Riga in March. I will go to his concert. Cool, cool. The guys play with soul. It is clear that for them music is not only about music. It is also about a lifestyle. They put their soul into it. Speaking about the handpan and similar instruments, there is a double story here. On one hand, the instrument itself, it is very self-sufficient and already creates around itself an aura of music, meditation, creativity, and the second part is how the musician himself presents it. Even now on the internet, a lot of new musicians appear and some videos catch attention. I already train my visual experience. I see that a lot is appearing and playing technique, that is now it has turned simply into an art. Since we touched on the topic of handpans, please tell, these are 2 related instruments, large tongue drums like RAV Vast and the handpan. From the point of view of music, what are the advantages and disadvantages? I mean, for what purposes would you take a handpan and for what would you take a tongue drum, if it can even be divided like that? It can be divided, but it will not be entirely correct, because the question of what is better or worse depends not only on goals, it also depends purely on subjective opinion. For instance, let us take 2 formats: a performance in terms of meditation and a concert performance on stage. If it is necessary to play some fast composition with accents and so on, then this is more suitable for a performance, and I would take handpan there. And not all, but most likely made of nitrided steel, so that the sustain is not too long, because this will introduce other difficulties. For meditation, for relaxation, for some immersions like that, I would use RAV Vast, that is, instruments with a longer sustain. Handpans made of stainless steel also have longer and richer sustain. I like RAV Vast because, due to the long sustain, you can create variations of dense sound overflows, and they give more combinations, while the handpan has a different character of sound.
Разных вариаций. То есть открытый и закрытый язычок, да, и они дают более такие плотные сочетания.
In the last probably 5 years, I somehow stopped dividing inside myself which is better. They are simply different.
Ну, вот лет 5 как-то даже перестал внутри себя разделять, что там лучше, хуже, они просто разные.
Which is easier to handle, purely from a practical point of view? It depends on the person. Students come to me, study, and it seemed to me that it is easier, for example, to start playing RAV Vast than the handpan. But experience shows otherwise, that for some it is easier to start with RAV Vast and the tongue works for them, and the long sustain, but for some it does not work. That is, it is difficult to develop the first strike so that the rebound is clear. But on the handpan they succeed better right away. But in terms of care, RAV Vast are more resistant, due to the fact that there is no single plane like in handpans, which are tuned, and if you hit some area too hard, it goes out of tune. RAV Vast in this regard are more durable. I don't know what needs to be done to knock them out of tuning, but both RAV Vast and handpans require care in terms of rust. It is necessary to treat the instrument after playing, especially if we play near a body of water or outdoors where humidity is high, because rust can go inside. How do you take care of your RAV Vast? What do you use? There are various anti-corrosion products. If we leave a handpan in the sun or in a car, on the back seat, even in a case, and when we take it out and start playing, it can be a very bad situation. And if you hit it hard as well, you can damage the tuning. RAV Vast doesn't have this issue, because the steel is denser and stronger. And in this regard, they are also very suitable for children. If a small child hits a handpan hard, especially if it is made of delicate steel, it can damage the tuning. But with RAV Vast this will not happen.
Ударяет малышка там рукой, ну, как бы, либо любому глюкофону, они более устойчивы.
Rather, the child will hurt their hand. By the way, I can't help but ask about RAV Anima. If someone doesn't know, this is a unique new instrument by RAV Labs, developed last year. It has 5 dings, and each of these central tongues is tuned as a chord. Plus, around the circle there are standard tongues that produce a single tone. Ivan participated in testing this instrument, as far as I know, and now you have your own RAV Anima. Please share your feelings, impressions from playing. Is this really a revolution in the world of tongue drums? Listen, I'm very impressed. I really like it. The revolution is that all instruments of this type, handpans, RAV Vast, are limited in their note possibilities. There is one tuning, and that is it. Anima has 5 central bass tongues that help vary chords. That is, their number increases 5 times, although around there is one tuning. But thanks to these 5 different tongues, we can build different chords, different lines, and we get 5 instruments in one. Cool.
Больше, смотря
Or
как,
even more, depending on how to present this variation.
подать. Ну, я сейчас был
I
тоже
was
в
recently
путешествии,
traveling.
брал аниму,
I took Anima with me.
тоже мне,
A
ну,
lot
это
of
много
variability. I really
многоговоречивости,
like
очень
that I can
понравилось,
play
что я
both
могу
some
поиграть в
meditative
какие-то
things and some
штуки
clear,
посидеть.
cool compositions, a
И
wider
какие-то
spectrum,
прям
both in playing
четкие
and in
классные
expression.
композиции. Дает, ну, как бы, сразу больше, да, больший спектр и в плане игры, в плане выражения. Ну, еще анима.
And also, anima in
Анима — это
translation
перевод
means
душа.
soul.
И
And it seems they
тоже они
did
не
not
просто так
choose this name by chance, because when I
название
first started playing it,
использовали, потому что
this is
я, когда
about the
только
difference in
впервые начал на
feeling
нем
of each
играть,
instrument.
это
This
вот
instrument
про
goes
разные, да,
straight
ощущения
into the
каждого
soul.
инструмента. Этот
It
инструмент
somehow
прям в душу
touches it.
попадает, он как-то так затрагивает, то есть там это такая
There is
настройка,
such
она
a
очень
tuning
цепляет,
that
очень
really
глубоко
catches,
попадает.
goes very deep. Such an instrument for pure
Инструмент для
meditation.
самомедитации.
Great, great. Friends, we start saving for RAV Anima. Tell me please, as far as I know, your field of activity now is very interesting and unusual. You are engaged in body-sound harmonization of the human state. Tell a bit more in detail what it is. Body sound harmonization of the human state is essentially the path that I have gone through, that I had in life. We started our interview with the fact that I was engaged in music, and at some point later I encountered other difficulties in my life. Various psychological issues, physical well-being deteriorated significantly, and turning to psychologists and studying the world of classical therapy that is now available, I saw that meditation and sound influence the harmonization of the state. They somehow calibrate it to a more even condition. But some things, like sound healing, it does not affect. And the answers that work through these things I found in the world of body-oriented therapy. I went through a series of my own processes and sessions and studied all these techniques and methods, and now for the last 2-3 years I have been working on trying to combine these two approaches into one single technique, where a person can relax their bodily emotional tensions, which in general accumulate in the modern world, and stress.
Человек может расслабить свои телесно-эмоциональные зажимы, которые, в принципе, у нас копятся в современном мире, и стресс, он, ну, каждый находит какие-то свои.
Everyone finds their own ways to cope with it, but sometimes it becomes too much. And body techniques help very effectively to solve these problems. And sound, on one hand, can energize, support these processes, help a person recover. Long overtone instruments, the same RAV Vast, bowls, didgeridoo, frame drum, all of this is perceived by the body very strongly. On the other hand, sound can act as a trigger or indicator for a certain state. That is, a gong or the same didgeridoo, frame drum, as I notice, if there is a lot of fear, tension in the body, lack of connection with the legs, then these sounds will cause discomfort in people. And this is not about the sound itself being bad or scary, but it really happens that the sound of the frame drum or didgeridoo is perceived as some kind of danger, because something happened to the person earlier that causes such an unconscious reaction. For the last few years, I have been working in this direction. I continue to see how it works together, and I find a lot of positive results. Great, great. Tell me, I saw that you use tongue drums a lot in your sessions, and I wanted to ask, in your opinion, tongue drums are best combined with what type of instruments? I really like the combination with guitar. I would put it in the first place. In general, string instruments with tongue instruments give a very rich and juicy sound. Tongue instruments give a dense sound foundation, and the guitar enriches it with chord variations. That is, the guitar can add more musical possibilities to the bass that the tongue drum creates. They complement each other well. It sounds very cool with didgeridoo. Here you get two overtone instruments, they complement each other as well. I really like how it sounds with the crystal harp or crystal bowls, also a very dense sound and a musical meditative story. It sounds very cool with flutes. It sounds less successful, for example, with some loud percussion, but again, it depends on the musician. If someone plays djembe loudly and you start playing RAV Vast or handpan next to it, the drum will of course overpower it. But if you play softly, on cajon, for instance, then these instruments also complement each other. Therefore, it is difficult to say what combines poorly, because you can even take two tongue drums and it will also sound bad. These questions are provocative. Sorry. Djembe players will object. They will say, yesterday we played with a friend, it was fine. In fact, everything can sound great. It depends on the musicians. These instruments like to be heard. Not listened to, but heard. And when 2 or 3 people play, you need to really hear each other. These instruments are quiet by nature. Their sound is quieter than a drum, than a guitar, so they need to be given space so that they open up and bring in this magic of their sound. I agree. And in conclusion, I wanted to ask about your creative plans. What do you dream about? Probably my creative dreams are more about performances, travels, collaborations with different musicians. I would also like to try different new tunings that will appear, because this field is constantly developing. This is said by a person who played 35 instruments, friends! There is never too much magic. Now Anima has come out. In a year, I don't know, maybe they will delight us with something else, we will hope. Alright, Ivan, I was very glad to see you and hear you. I hope it was just as interesting for you as it was for me. We wish you every success, new magic of music from all instruments, and, of course, inner balance and harmony. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. Thank you, Roman, I was glad. And that is all for today. Bye-bye.